What if the fuel powering your commute didn't come from a deep-sea oil rig, but from a sugarcane field? This is ethanol blending. It is the chemical process of mixing agricultural alcohol derived from crops like sugarcane or surplus rice directly into standard petrol. Currently, India operates near an E10 baseline, meaning 10% of the fuel mixture is ethanol, but the government is pushing aggressively toward a new standard, E20. To understand why, look at this volumetric model of India's oil consumption. The massive block on the left represents the 85% of crude oil that India is forced to import. The tiny sliver on the right is domestic production. That extreme imbalance leaves the economy highly vulnerable to global price shocks. To close that gap, the national strategy is moving at an aggressive pace. In 2014, blending was at just 1%. By 2023, it hit roughly 12%. Now there is a hard deadline to reach a 20% substitution by 2025. Hitting that target requires partially replacing the output of massive, heavy industrial refinery networks with a biological alternative. It also aims to treat a secondary crisis. Complete reliance on traditional internal combustion engines has blanketed major cities in severe chronic smog. Upgrading a national infrastructure to E20 is a physical overhaul, not a simple liquid substitution. It demands tearing down and rebuilding deeply entrenched biochemical, mechanical, and macroeconomic systems. Ultimately, E20 operates as an aggressive import substitution strategy. It forces a complex trade-off, trading the geopolitical risks of foreign oil dependency for new, highly localized systemic constraints. The new supply chain begins far from any oil derrick. It starts with a raw biological harvest. Raw materials like sugarcane and molasses are collected and moved into fermentation tanks. Here, microorganisms are introduced to consume the agricultural sugars and convert them directly into alcohol. That raw alcohol is then moved to industrial facilities like these distillation towers. The distillation process is required to purify the ethanol, removing excess water and impurities so it can be safely mixed with petrol. Other nations have already built out similar pipelines. The United States relies heavily on its massive corn harvests to produce high-level blends, reaching up to 85% ethanol. But Brazil represents the ultimate global case study. Their infrastructure is so thoroughly integrated that daily commuters can regularly fill up with E100, pure unblended ethanol. India's own ethanol-blended petrol program is explicitly modeled after Brazil's high-blend success. However, Brazil operates with abundant baseline water resources. India is attempting to scale up this identical biochemical process amidst severe pre-existing hydrological scarcity. Relying on this biological pipeline means a nation's fuel security is permanently tied to its agricultural yields and unpredictable weather patterns. To see the mechanical impact of this fuel, we have to look inside the tight confines of a vehicle's engine cylinder. This cross-section compares two combustion cycles. On the left is standard petrol, on the right is E20. Ethanol contains a higher chemical oxygen content. When it ignites, that extra oxygen allows for a much cleaner, more complete combustion cycle. Because the fuel burns more completely, it drastically reduces the output of harmful hydrocarbons and carbon monoxide, while preventing long-term carbon deposits from building up inside the engine block. But that thermodynamic advantage comes with a serious mechanical reality check. It is entirely false that any car currently on the road can safely absorb E20 fuel. Exposing older, unmodified engines to a 20% alcohol blend introduces massive friction. Over time, the alcohol causes accelerated wear, actively corroding rubber seals and degrading incompatible metal parts. Then there is the thermodynamic density penalty. Ethanol inherently contains less energy per unit of volume than pure petrol. For the consumer, that thermodynamic penalty translates directly to the dashboard. Drivers will experience a noticeable, unavoidable drop in fuel efficiency and overall mileage. To handle this harsh chemical environment, automobile manufacturers are being forced to completely overhaul their production lines to build specialized, flex-fuel-compatible engines. Achieving cleaner local emissions and reducing foreign oil reliance requires a permanent sacrifice in thermodynamic efficiency, alongside a massive capital expenditure to replace millions of legacy hardware units. Stepping back from individual vehicles, we can evaluate the national macroeconomic ledger created by this E20 target. This balanced dashboard tracks the primary systemic benefit: a massive structural reduction in the billions of dollars spent annually to import foreign crude oil. That foreign exchange savings creates a powerful domestic feedback loop. E20 artificially stimulates massive demand for crops, utilizing surplus produce and injecting capital directly into rural infrastructure. You can see the physical manifestation of this demand spike on local roads, as massive loads of raw biological material route to nearby distilleries. This brings us to a second major reality check. The assumption that ethanol is a perfectly eco-friendly solution ignores the physical cost of production. The intensive use of chemical fertilizers, rapid soil degradation, and the risk of deforestation required to expand crop yields actively offset the carbon savings gained at the tailpipe. There is also the direct conflict of food versus fuel. Diverting highly arable land away from edible crop production actively limits the national food supply. Shrinking that edible food supply exposes the broader economy to inflation, triggering sudden, unpredictable price fluctuations in basic agricultural commodities. But the most severe systemic bottleneck is water. Cultivating sugarcane at an industrial scale requires a disproportionate, massive draw on local aquifers. Pushing water-intensive fuel crops into already vulnerable, drought-prone states like Maharashtra carries immense physical consequences. The E20 policy effectively swaps out the geopolitical risk of foreign oil dependency for the highly localized risks of severe water depletion and food security stress. The ethanol blended petrol program operates as a total restructuring of India's energy and agricultural architecture. The systemic victories are undeniable. It guarantees a vastly stronger rural economy, tangibly improves urban air quality, and creates vital sovereignty from imported crude oil. Yet the operational risks are equally severe. The ongoing strain on soil health, the permanent thermodynamic penalty on engines, and the critical threat to hydrological stability cannot be ignored. To prevent a system failure, the state must actively manage 4 strict mandates: balancing the food versus fuel ratio, enforcing sustainable farming practices, aggressively upgrading legacy vehicle fleets, and strictly policing local water tables. The ultimate success of E20 does not hinge on whether ethanol is objectively good or bad. It hinges entirely on the rigor of the system's engineering used to deploy it. In the end, ethanol blending is a high-stakes gamble. It requires India to perfectly balance the pursuit of rapid energy progress against the rigid, unforgiving limits of its own biological sustainability.